Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Two of my actual close friends, but they only call me an acquaintance. But John Fund from National Review, you've been, you know state issues more so than most people in this state. So.
Steve knows even more than I do, but I do a lot of budget and tax spending issues and a lot of union stuff, and Steve is, of course, the energy master. He has a new book out.
Steve Moore, of course, formerly from the Wall Street Journal, Club for Growth founder, now with that awful Heritage Foundation. So life is good?
Life is good, yeah.
You just put out a book with Art Laffer, and I'm trying to remember, and
a couple of others, and it's called The Wealth of States, and it's about why people are moving from blue states to red states, and it's happening. 1,000 people every day on net are moving from blue states to red states.
Colorado is a net gainer.
You know, yeah, Colorado is one of those states that you used to be. When I first met you, Colorado was a red state, and now what do you think you are now? A purple state at best?
Oh, at best, a purple state.
So it's all those Californians who are coming in and voting, voting liberal, right?
Well, they come here, and I think they feel a sense of relief because housing prices, by comparison, are low, but they're jacking them up, and the regulatory state is not as bad. So when it gets increased, they don't feel it the way that those.
So we do a rating every year on which states have moved up the most in terms of their competitiveness and which states have lost ground. And guess what state has lost? Colorado has lost more ground than all but 4 states. So you're moving in the wrong direction. States like Indiana, Wisconsin, Arizona are moving in the right direction. So you got some work to do here, John.
Actually, I'm thinking about moving there, and maybe Colorado will get better by comparison. Hey, well, let me ask you, because you guys are hip deep into this election, have either one of you in your political lives seen a presidential year like this? Let me just start over here. Am I right to say this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen?
You know, in the financial community, they call 100-year events that happen only once a century black swan events. This is a black swan election. And by the way, the surprises are not over yet. We have seen more turmoil, more upsetting of the apple cart, more anti-establishment battering of each of the establishment than in any other election I can remember.
And not just on the Republican side, but
also Bernie Sanders
is
a revolutionary movement there, basically against the Goldman Sachs Democrats and the old Clinton Democrats. And the Democratic Party has moved left, and the Republican Party is moving populist.
Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And the Democratic Party has moved way to the left in the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, you listen to Hillary. You know, she has moved so far from what Bill Clinton stood for. Remember when Bill Clinton ran for president? We're going to balance the budget. We're going to be for free trade. We're going to welfare reform.
The era
like
of big government is over.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, those were the evil words that Bill Clinton spoke.
And now
they're embarrassed by Bill Clinton's record.
Now Hillary is basically wants to bring back single-payer health care, which was rejected under Bill Clinton's administration, and she wants to expand and extend Obamacare. And basically, there's almost no difference in policy terms between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has been reduced to the argument, well, he has interesting ideas, but I can get them done.
Which I fear she can. All right, let me ask you about anger, though. In the Republican ranks, there has been anger brewing, and Trump seems to be the expression of that anger. Would that be a good way to put this? And what are they angry about that has brought Donald Trump, a reality TV star, to be our nominee?
So the word that, you know, when you go talk to Trump people, and I've been to several Trump rallies, and I have talked to a lot of Trump voters, and the word that comes out of their mouth is betrayal. They feel betrayed by the Republicans, that they haven't done the things they promised they would do, that they're incompetent, that they just say things to get in office, and then they...
they're politicians.
And then I actually, you know, I made this prediction back in December of 2015, when the Republicans signed that omnibus spending bill. I said, this is the greatest gift to Donald Trump ever, and this is going to elevate him potentially to win the president, at least the Republican nomination. And that was a symbol that, you know, Republicans just kind of caved in. I'll say this about, look, people love Trump, hate Trump, and people in the middle. The one thing you've got to give this guy credit for, he recognized something, in my opinion, John, that all the other candidates did not recognize, which was this rage. And he tapped into it in a way that was incredibly impressive.
And on 2 specific examples, immigration and trade, These were issues that the establishment from both parties had said, well, you don't really want to talk about that. You know, this is not really worthy of debate. You don't understand it. They're complicated. Well, a lot of people don't think they're complicated. They think if you're going to have immigration reform, you have to have a secure border first, and that's a very legitimate point of view. And on trade, not every trade deal, which are these giant government, sanctioned, basically favor fests, not every trade deal is automatically free trade. It's often managed trade, and it often hurts American workers because we don't often cut the best deals. That's a demonstrated fact. I think there's another point in addition to what Steve said. 80% of Americans in American counties have seen a net loss of income in the last 15 years. In other words, their standard of living is lower than it was 15 years ago. The average American family is exactly where they were in terms of median income as they were in the year 2000. That means we've basically stagnated if you're dependent on wage income, but people who own equities, stocks, bonds, Obama and the Federal Reserve, which has poured trillions of dollars into the economy, basically printing money, they have kept those markets afloat. So the Democrats in the last 8 years have basically made the rich richer, the middle class stagnant, and the poor, of course, are the victims of an incredibly dysfunctional welfare state. And the Republicans didn't do enough to fight that, and they're now reaping the whirlwind.
Not only that, I mean, just add to that, that's absolutely true. That, when you go back to 2000, I mean, who was president from 2001 to 2008? George W. Bush. So I think a lot of these Trump voters, they didn't like what George W. Bush did. By the way, it's amazing how unpopular the Iraq and Afghanistan wars are with these voters.
Because we're still in them.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about who the big losers in the Republican by the fact that Trump has won. I think the neocons, the ones who want to, have America, who have a military presence around the world, because it turns out conservatives not so much. They want to bring the troops home. They do want Europe to pay more for the cost for NATO. They want, maybe South Korea can take care of its own border. Those kinds of things.
Well, then why didn't someone like Rand Paul take flight? I've never seen more talent running for president than I have in this last cycle.
I worked for Rand Paul for a bit, and
Sure.
John knows, but let me just talk about, because I think what happened to Rand Paul is emblematic of what happened all over. We couldn't get a word in edgewise. I mean, we couldn't get any message out, and that's because there was this 800-pound gorilla out there who was just steamrolling
with
over
the media
everyone.
accomplices.
Well, but there's some. I would disagree with you a little bit about that. Trump. Yes, but the media, Trump understood that. I mean, the media loves a three-ring circus.
Oh, I understand why it happened.
He created the three-ring circus.
I understand why it happened,
yeah.
but something that we didn't fully appreciate in June 2015, when Trump announced, Hillary Clinton had a 94% name ID. Trump had a 93% name ID because of The Apprentice and everything else. The next highest well-known Republican was Jeb at 73. Yeah. Wow. Then you had to dip down into the low 50s to get to Chris Christie, and then everybody else, including Rand Paul, who fell below that. Trump filled the space so completely because of his nearly 100% name ID. The media, of course, loved Trump for two reasons: ratings, and also because I submit the media looks at Donald Trump and says, this is exactly what we think Republicans really are like. And
you really think they're that sinister in the media?
No, they're not cynical. They're not cynical. And we're going to give him a lot of coverage because he's going to be the great disruptor in the Republican primaries, and he sure was. I think they let it get out of hand, and I think that they didn't realize the voters were as much in a revolt as Steve mentioned. And what happened is Trump now has taken the nomination, and the media is torn between, my God, this guy could be one step away from the presidency, and my God, he's the Republican nominee now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask the basic question. I never thought, like most people, that he would get the nomination. I could see the path towards it, and I said, I don't see how this guy can become president. I'm not so certain anymore. I think particularly if there's some sort of fear event that happens, if there's an economic crisis or a terrorist attack, I think that fear motivation, sure. We want a strong man.
Because we've had a black swan event, there can be other black swan events, one in 100 years. So, but I would say this, he does have to address certain demographic issues. Women. 65% negative with, I'm sorry, 73% with women, 65% overall. People don't view him as honest and trustworthy. Now, Hillary has sky-high negatives too, but she's only at 59. So you're basically dealing. You're
never
dealing
before
with
in history
two,
have two more hated people ever run for president.
You know, I call it the race of the evil of two lessers.
I would say that people who, I hear a lot of my conservative friends say, Trump can't win, Trump can't win, Trump can't win. First of all, this is a man who's defied every prediction for the last 9 months. So to say that he can't do something when he's done, I think this is the biggest political upset in 75 years of American politics. That's number one. Number two, so what is this election about? I mean, not question number one, what's it about? Change. People do want change. By almost 2 to 3 to 1 margins, people think the country is going in the wrong direction, not the right direction. That's a big problem for Hillary because she is running as essentially as a third term for Barack Obama. And people don't want that. Now, maybe they just don't like Donald Trump so much
Well,
that
he may
they'll
be
vote
too
for
much change,
Yeah,
or change that's too unpredictable.
True. But the other,
and that's his biggest problem.
Yeah.
I think he needs more consistency in order to win over independent voters.
Yeah, I've always said, if you follow this race, as we both have followed it, there's a good Trump and a bad Trump. And the good Trump, when he's good, he's really good.
What is the good Trump?
I
Give
just
me an
mean
example.
in terms of connecting with people and saying things that that I remember, like when he lost the race in Iowa, he went on, he was very gracious, congratulated Ted
And then
Cruz.
48 hours later, he wasn't.
Right. So there's a good.
The problem is the good Trump and the bad Trump. It's like the angel and the devil on the shoulder.
That's
you run the devil's advocate.
Right.
You understand how that works. And they're constantly yelling at each other across the shoulder.
John, why do you always listen to the devil on your shoulder?
Because he's always right. He always wins. That's why. This guy has a path. Can we all agree?
Yeah, that's what the point I was going to make. I actually think Trump
I
can
think
win.
it's a more narrow path because the fact is, because of his unpredictability, he can land some blows on Hillary that she doesn't expect. I grant that.
And he can say things with anonymity. I mean, he gets away with this.
But in the end, people want to know what they're voting for. And with Donald Trump...
Oh, you're so silly.
Well, no, they want some understanding of what there's going to go. And just being a great leader and being able to say you're fired gets you so far. But in the broader electorate, where you're dealing with independent voters and you're dealing with moderates, you got to actually have something that people say he's got a plan, or at least something I can depend upon. Donald Trump has a plan every morning. He wakes up for breakfast and everything starts over again. You know about the tax plan. Every day is a new iteration of the tax plan. The original tax plan was great, but who knows what it's going to be a month from now? Who knows what it's going to be 2 months from now?
Peggy Noonan says this best, I think, in the Wall Street Journal. She says, the thing that Americans love about Donald Trump is you just never know what he's going to say next. And then she said, and I thought it was one of her funniest lines, she said, sometimes I don't even think Donald Trump knows what he's going to say next.
People like that in an entertainer.
Yeah,
they like people reinventing themselves as an entertainer. And Trump has, of course, merged reality TV with American politics.
Yeah, he's turned it into a...
As we get closer and closer to the November election, people do take this more seriously.
I agree with that.
Well, I think there's also, people don't like Hillary, and Trump is a wild card because you can find a quote that he says that makes you happy on everything because he's all over the place.
And 5 minutes later, he'll say something different.
Exactly. So I can understand, let's just give this a try. What do we have to lose?
That's what, when you talk to a lot of Trump voters, they say that. They say, look, I don't trust everything this guy says. I don't know exactly what he's going to do. But you know what? He is, the fact that he's not a professional politician is a huge asset in this kind of environment. And,
well, the cure can be worse than the disease.
Well, we'll see.
All right, but
I don't know.
In full disclosure, National Review was one of the first to come out in the conservative circles, guns blazing, and say, no way, no how, we have to stop him. You've got George Will saying it is every American's duty to stop this guy. Mitt Romney is on it. Why so strongly
because
on it?
I think part of the reason is geographical. We have known Donald Trump personally and very well for 30 years. Now, I've never had a fight. Yeah, we inhabit. By the way, the only part of the northern seaboard, East Coast seaboard, that Donald Trump lost was the district where he lives and works, which is Manhattan, in the Republican primary. Donald Trump is someone I've always gotten along with. He's never insulted me, even though I've criticized him. I've been to Mar-a-Lago. I've been on the jet.
You've been on the jet?
Oh yeah,
with him?
Absolutely. I cannot.
All right, so what's the deal with the hair? You've been able to see it up close.
I'm too polite to tell you the truth. I'm too
Fair
polite. It's mostly real. Now, having said that, I think Donald Trump is one of the best dinner companions you could possibly have. But I wouldn't sign a contract to go into business with him. It's just that simple.
A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
And you know what? They get burned.
Well, that's
his
not,
business.
that's not fair.
No. His business career, and now we're not talking about the 4 bankruptcies. We're talking about the totality of his career, is a career of broken dreams and disappointed
that's
people.
not fair.
That's
not
And
fair.
you know what? We know why he's called Mr. 80% in New York. He is notorious in New York for being called Mr. 80% because he will pay you 80% of the bill if you're a vendor or a contractor or something who's doing something for him. And then you sit and you wait for the other 20%. And you sit and you wait.
He has to be doing something right, though.
Well,
This is a guy who's built an
but
empire.
Steve, let me finish.
Yeah.
The guy's reputation in New York City. Of course, he intimidates and people fear him because he's the alpha male in the room. But there is not a single New York bank that will lend Donald Trump money. Now, he does get to borrow money occasionally from Japanese and German banks who are awed by the persona. But there has to be a reason. Not a single New York bank will lend him money. Not one.
All right, but let's go the other way, which is I understand this argument so well, but the alternative is so horrendous. The Wall Street Journal did
The Hildebeest.
The Hildebeest. When Bobby Jindal said there's only one person worse than Trump, and it's Hillary. Given that we're not voting for one branch of government, we're voting for 2 branches of government, is he the better choice?
To me, this is not for a conservative, this is not a hard choice. I mean, Donald Trump is significantly better, in my opinion, on almost every issue. You might
Especially the good Trump.
The good Trump. You might make the case that Hillary is more free trade than Trump, although
she really wouldn't be in reality.
Who knows, But look, he's for the biggest tax cut since Ronald Reagan ran in 1980. He wants to repeal Obamacare. He does say there's a lot of spending that he wants to cut. He wants to make some changes to our military that I think make a lot of sense.
You trust him with the nuclear codes?
Versus Hillary?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is an experiment. The people, what I like most about Trump is the people who are behind him. I mean, these are working class Americans who feel betrayed by both parties, who feel they've become ignored by both parties. And, they're the people you were talking about, John, the people whose incomes have not risen. We haven't had a pay raise in 18 years. And they just say a pox on both these parties. Let's try this because as so many of these, people who vote for Trump say, how could it be worse than what we had under Barack Obama?
All right, we spent most of this.
And by the way, the Supreme Court is the key
Yeah,
for
that's
me.
huge. Right. Yeah.
Because with Hillary, we know what kind of Supreme Court justices we're going to get. With Donald Trump, I think it is far more likely than not that we are going to get constitutionalist Supreme Court nominees.
I think so, too.
And that is very important with the death of Antonin Scalia, because the Supreme Court is in the balance.
All right, let's go on the other side for a while. What should be a cakewalk for Miss Clinton has not been a cakewalk. Without the superdelegate insiders, rigging, however you'd like to put it, Bernie Sanders is the flip side of the coin for Donald Trump, is he not? He is
and he's
an
even
anger
more
candidate.
improbable,
A 74-year-old socialist
who's never been a member of the Democratic Party until last year. By the way, we do have to give him credit. He finally is name branding the Democratic Party properly.
as
a socialist party.
No, that's a good point. I love that.
He's winning more primaries than she is.
I think it's sad, actually. I mean, I think it's sad in this country where we have half of Democratic voters who would vote for a socialist. I mean, socialism is a failure everywhere it's been tried in the world. I mean, the end game of socialism is Greece, it's Detroit, it's Puerto Rico, it's Venezuela. All these places that are failing, that are bankrupt, where poor people are at the most.
To defend Democratic voters, much of why they were voting for Bernie Sanders is not just his positions; it's who he's running against.
That's absolutely true. But
and he's running against what I call political paste.
That's true.
I mean, you could walk through Hillary Clinton's deepest charisma and not get your ankles wet.
That's true, John. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But it is also true there's something that's happened, especially with young people. I mean, you've seen these polls, John. Almost half of young people think socialism is a better system than capitalism. Now, we're not doing something right, either in our schools or our think tanks or our newspapers, if half of the people think, as Milton Friedman used to tell me, you knew Milton very well, what was the most important enduring lesson of the 20th century? free market capitalism is a success, and socialism, communism, whatever ism you want to call it, is a failure.
You had to live through the 20th
well,
century to
but
see that.
Why are we
And
teaching the history of this?
Somebody who's 27 years old was born the year the Berlin Wall fell.
That's amazing.
And what do our public schools teach? They teach, at best, recycling, multiculturalism, environmentalism.
And Stalin may have gone a little too far.
And yeah, exactly. And, you know, and they never learn about the Constitution. They never learn about the comparisons between socialism and
That's
free
my
market
point.
economies. Our public schools are turning out people whose minds are full of mush.
Now, with respect to Hillary, I think the advantage that Republicans have, guys, is that Republicans found out pretty early the voters didn't want another Bush, right? Democrats are just finally, oh my God, voters don't want another Clinton either. I think that's a real albatross. And it gets...
And by the way, to agree with Steve, there's one other black swan that can come very quickly, and that's the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Now, I do not believe she's being indicted. I don't think the Obama Justice Department would ever indict her. But I do think the FBI report, which will document the case against her, will leak. And that can be very politically damaging because Hillary Clinton basically ignored every security protocol you can imagine. Two former CIA directors, John Deutsch and David Petraeus, had to plead guilty, pay fines, and suffer a lot of community service time because they did something far less than what Hillary Clinton did. So even though she may not be indicted, she could be hurt politically in a race against Trump because that could lower her honesty and trustworthy numbers even lower.
I pray every day that she is not indicted. If you're a Republican, you want
because
Hillary
Joe Biden
Clinton.
would replace
her.
her.
You want Hillary. I want to run against Hillary.
She's the weakest Democrat.
She's by far the weakest Democrat.
Really?
Yeah.
So
she's so injured. She's new Coke, and people don't want to buy new Coke. And
actually, she spoiled Coke.
Yeah, she spoiled because she got so. You know, I think there are a lot of Democrats who I talk to privately say, "Is there a way we can throw her over the bus?" And you know,
Well,
put her, now they don't want. A lot of those people don't want Sanders, but they would like, you know,
Joe Biden, Uncle
Biden
Joe,
or John Kerry or someone. Like that.
well, let me ask you: is there any way that this happens? I mean,
Yes, I think
because
so.
if you talk to Democrats, they will tell you
They want to win.
if there's going to be an FBI report leaked before the Democratic Convention, which is still 9 weeks away, they're going to watch the polls. And if she takes a big hit in the polls based on what's in that report, then they'll start talking about how to have an internal coup. And if she doesn't take a hit, they'll let her go forward because they think Trump is a weak candidate.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem that Hillary has. Republicans have a rule that says you have to vote for the candidate on the first ballot. Now, it's not enforceable, but that's the rule.
What's the Democrat?
Democrats have the same rule, but they add one other sentence in their rules. No Democratic delegate has to vote for any candidate on the first ballot if they cannot do so in good conscience. Now, if you go to the Democratic Rule Book and Dictionary and you look that up, you know what it says good conscience is? Can they win in November?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm joking on that last part.
That's in the small print.
But seriously, Democrats know how to dump people over the side. Ask Senator Torricelli, New Jersey, who managed to get replaced as the Democratic candidate after the ballots had been printed.
Yeah. Yep.
So Bernie Sanders in the polls right now would win against Trump.
I don't believe that for
You don't believe that for a
I
minute?
don't think the broader electorate has
no
figured
way.
out exactly
Yeah.
what Bernie Sanders would mean. Even Hillary Clinton has
Yeah.
effectively pointed out that Sanders would bankrupt the country.
He would even do worse than Hillary. Because
Once-
look, because I believe in every ounce of my body that it is not in the DNA of Americans to elect a socialist. We are not a socialist
To
country.
speak
We
up-
don't want to be Sweden or France. We want to be America.
To speak up for Donald Trump, everything he says has been dissected and ridiculed and criticized. And everybody knows Trump's weaknesses.
right.
Bernie Sanders, that's just
wonderful.
Bernie.
Yeah,
That's
right.
just Bernie. He wants free college tuition. He wants everything. No, when's the last time you saw the media actually total up the price tag of his stuff? That would happen in a general election. The Republicans would point it out. The media has given Bernie Sanders a pass on
unbelievable.
policy
All right, let's-
because they like the contest. They like the fact that he's more interesting than Hillary, but they have not challenged him on policy the way they have on Trump.
This reminds me this year of Colorado in 2010, where this was the big Republican year, the Tea Party year. We had a generic lead in the gubernatorial poll of 9 points. Never happened in Colorado history. And we nominated, with some help of the liberals who put money into the primary race, an anger candidate, a guy named Dan Mays, who said everything we wanted to say but had no electoral experience. And the press went along with it because it was interesting. 20 minutes after he won the nomination, they started actually doing their job and finding out what his past really was, which was close to criminal.
You are so right.
And now I wonder if
thing.
the media is about going to do the same thing with Trump.
And this look, obviously Hillary has got problems with the email server, but when the Washington Post announces we have put 20 reporters on Donald Trump, and by the way, most of our findings are going to have to come
I didn't
out
know
until
they had
after
20
the election.
reporters at the Washington Post.
But seriously, do you notice until Trump stumbled and accidentally for a while said he wasn't going to release his tax returns at all before November, how much that issue had died? I mean, Ted Cruz raised it, a few people raised it. Basically, the media gave him a pass.
Mitt raised it.
Mitt raised it. He's not running against Trump.
Right.
So they're gonna hammer him on the tax returns after the convention. They're gonna hammer him on whatever the 20 reporters of the Washington Post. Look, just because I don't like Donald Trump's as a candidate doesn't mean that the media is not going to be viciously unfair to him.
Is that going to be enough?
I'd put slight odds on Trump at this point.
Really?
I really would. I think because it's a changed election, I think Hillary just has a very tough time. You know, if I'm Trump, it's just very simple. If you like what's happened in the last 8 years, vote for Hillary. If you want to change, vote.
Only a minute left.
Yep.
Here in Colorado, we're worried about what's on the top of the ticket because we have the most vulnerable Democrat in the Senate up for re-election. And does Trump help us with that?
Trump is what I call a high beta candidate. That means he could destroy the party, or he could, do really well, and then we could. So,
John, just watch around the country what is happening with the Republican Senate candidates. They say, "I support Donald Trump. I'm not endorsing him."
Right.
So they're distancing themselves because he's too high maintenance. Every Republican Senate candidate is going to have to defend everything he says, and that will change every couple days. And that's a high stress environment.
Does he have any coattails that comes along with him?
we don't know. We don't know yet. I just don't think that's an answerable question.
Do black swans have coattails? We don't see black swans often enough to know.
So I'm just more confused than when we started this conversation.
That's why you have to have us back.
We will have you back. John, thank you. Steve, thank you. Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Also, check out the Independence Institute. That's independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend. See you next week.